Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Lisa Andrews, and I'm manager of the Career Center here at the CFP Board in Washington, D.C. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon, Successful Salary Negotiation Strategies. And before we start, I wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is going to be recorded, so if you have a friend or colleague that wanted to listen to the webinar but for whatever reason was not able to, the webinar is going to be recorded. It should be up on the CFP Board Career Center website within a week or two. So you can just refer them to the website and to look out for that. We will have time for questions and answers at the end of the webinar. So as we go along, if you have questions, there's a Q&A box you can type your questions into. And at the end, I'll be going over any questions. So let's get started. And I should say, we're calling this successful salary negotiation strategies, but really a more accurate term would be successful compensation negotiation strategies, because really when you're negotiating, you're really negotiating a total compensation package, which includes salary, but it also includes a lot of other perks and benefits as well. So it's not just salary, of course. That is, your primary focus and what you're going to be basing everything else on is that salary. That's sort of the reason you're going to take the position. But there's definitely a lot of other things to negotiate, and we'll go over that. Also, I want to acknowledge, this is a difficult conversation to have, and I realize that. Money is difficult to talk about. It's a little bit awkward, and this is kind of a strange dance that you're doing with the recruiter to negotiate your compensation package. You don't want to make a misstep. You don't want to overstate what you want. You want the job, so you're eager, so you don't want to turn off the employer. So it's kind of complicated, and it is a difficult conversation. But with some of these tips, it can be navigated successfully. So hopefully you'll pick some things up, and you'll feel a little bit more comfortable when you have your next salary negotiation. So let's get started. So you may be wondering where in the interview process the salary negotiation process occurs. And some of you may have been through some interviews where up front they've listed the salary on the website or in the job description, so there was sort of no mystery. You kind of knew what you were dealing with and what you were starting with at the outset. Some of you may have also been asked to provide a salary history in your cover letter. So that's another technique as well and factor. Some of you may have been asked right out from the employer, what is your salary range early on in the interview process. So all of these things are definitely possible, but here's sort of the typical route a salary, when salary conversations are going to come up. Of course, you're going to submit your resume and cover letter to the position that you're interested in, or you may have a networking contact that you're going through to get an interview for the position. You're going to receive an initial phone screen interview generally, and this will last probably a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, where they're narrowing the field. So they may phone screen 5 to 10 people, but ultimately they want to whittle it down to probably 3 to 4, most likely the top 3. And this is where you would move on to the in-person, in-depth interview, which will probably last several hours to a half day, sometimes a full day, sometimes dinner the night before and then a full day. It really depends on the company. And then there's a possibility of a second or even third interview with different firm members and people from the organization. So you're probably starting out with an HR representative or someone from that department, and then you're moving on to closer and closer to the team you'll actually be working with. So initially you're dealing with someone that's really outside the process and outside the team that you'll be working with. But as you go through the interview process, you're going to get closer and closer to the person you're going to be working for ultimately, and the people you're going to be working with. So, you'll have that second or third interview. At that second or third interview, there will not only be Q&A, but there's probably going to be some kind of presentation aspect. So they want to see, how your presentation skills are and your public speaking skills. So they're going to ask you probably to make some kind of presentation or do some kind of a case study for them. So if you make it through all of that, you'll have an offer that is extended to you. And at this point, the salary negotiation begins. So again, in some cases, there was some talk of salary at the beginning, but that was really kind of to establish a baseline, or again, if the salary was advertised on the job description, this was to establish a baseline. But there's always negotiation in a hiring process. So the salary is generally negotiated after the offer is extended. And then once the negotiation has been completed, you either accept or reject the offer that you ultimately decide upon, that you and the employer ultimately decide upon. So let's take a step back to the salary negotiation process and find out who begins the negotiation process. And again, sometimes the employer will front load the salary discussion by putting it in the job description or asking you up front for a salary history or something like that. But I want to let you know that you should never bring up salary during the interview process. This is just sort of job search process 101, interviewing, protocol, and etiquette. So you should not be the one to bring up salary during the interview process. What you want to do is let the hiring manager or the person that you'll actually be working for at that point start the initial conversation about salary. So again, you don't want to be the one to bring it up. You want to wait for them to bring up the salary negotiation and begin that process. Now you may ask, what's the reason for this? Well, the reason is you are giving them the illusion of power or standing. So it allows you to steer the process. If you began the salary discussion, they would steer the process. So in any negotiation, the person that kind of starts first is the position, generally the weaker position, because there's always going to be a counter. So if you allow them to begin first, you have a little bit more room to negotiate. Also, you should know that you shouldn't be afraid to negotiate. They made you an offer, so they definitely want you to work for them. Negotiating salary will not negate this. So don't worry that they're going to suddenly say, whoa, we don't want this person because they want to negotiate the salary. Every employer expects that you will be negotiating the salary, benefits, and perks. This is expected. They're prepared for it, so you should be prepared as well. And you're not going to get an offer rescinded because you're negotiating salary. This is just a natural part of the job search, interview, getting the job process, and everyone does it. So, what is negotiable? Of course, salary. So salary, as I said, is sort of the baseline for everything. Certainly when you're weighing whether or not you're going to take a position, I would guess 90 to 95% of the time, salary is going to be one of the major, if not the most important factor in whether or not you take the job. You may love the job. You may love the people you're going to be working for and with. You may love the commute, the location, the coffee setup. But if the salary isn't there, you're really realistically not going to be able to take the position unless you're willing to take a salary cut, or, you know, ultimately in the negotiation process, if it's lower than you thought it was and you really love the job, you're going to have to really think hard about that and whether or not you're willing to accept a lower salary because of all the benefits of the position in terms of commute, environment, job description, the reputation of the company, and all those other factors that you're considering when you're weighing a job offer. So, but salary, I would say, is kind of a deciding factor. I mean, you know what your budget is. You know what you need to live on. You know where you live and what it costs to live there. So salary is most definitely going to be the primary consideration and the primary negotiation factor. But there are others. For example, paid time off. So generally, employers have vacation policies of, you know, 2 weeks after 2 weeks to start with, or 4 weeks, or after 5 years of employment, 4 weeks, 2 years to begin, or something like that. But this could be negotiated. So you may settle for a lower salary, but you may be able to negotiate extra paid time off. This is definitely something that you can talk about with the employer, and some employers will be open to giving you more paid time off for a lesser salary. I mentioned the commute earlier. As we know, commuting is expensive, especially if you are commuting via public transit. Public transit can be expensive. I know it is here in the DC area. It can run, I know my own commute costs about $15 a day. So if you add that up over a month, that's a lot of money. So you can definitely negotiate your commuting or transit subsidy and see if they will give you money for mileage, see if they will even provide you with a company car if you're going to be traveling throughout a territory or something like that. Or if you're just traveling by transit, make sure that you negotiate a subsidy for that public transit. Education benefits. So some employers already provide tuition remission to you as an employee. This is a benefit that has become more and more popular as tuition has been rising. But this is also something that you can negotiate if for whatever reason it's not offered. As you know, professional development is really important. So if they're not paying for continued education for you, or you know, perhaps pursuing your CFP certification or something like that, this is something you could definitely negotiate. What I would say is uncommon is dependent benefits for education. So when we talk about education benefits, we're talking about it for you and not for your dependents. It would be pretty rare for an employer to pay for your child's college education. But you can certainly negotiate education benefits. Now, if this would be something they would reject, what I would say is continuing education benefits. So I know as a CFP, you definitely need continuing education credits, and they cost money. So this could be something that you negotiate with your employer to subsidize your continuing education, or subsidize some sort of conference or professional meeting that you would like to travel to that will cost you, you know, a couple $1,000 to $5,000 by the time you factor in airfare, the hotel stay, food, transportation, and all those other costs. So education benefits, or I should say professional development benefits, can definitely be something of interest to negotiate. And also, you'll know that the employer really cares about you if they're interested in your professional development. So at the very least, if they're not willing to pay for your certificate program for the CFP or some other certificate program, at the very least, they should be supporting your professional development. So again, travel to conferences for professional development is definitely something that you should negotiate, especially if they reject your negotiation tactic of getting education benefits. Your review schedule. So this is key because generally during the review process, your salary will be reevaluated and potentially increased depending on whether you met your goals and whether the company met its goals and that sort of thing. So you want to actually find out while you're interviewing what is the performance review schedule that they're on. So they may say you'll have a 30-day probation period that you'll have to pass. Generally, that doesn't get accompanied by a salary increase. But then there's usually a 6-month review and an annual review, at which point you'll renegotiate your salary as well. But you could actually ask for that to be moved up to potentially 3 months or 9 months. So it's something you could definitely consider talking to the employer about. Another thing you could possibly negotiate is flex time or telework options for those of you that have families or caring for an elderly parent and need a little bit of flexibility with your schedule. This is something that you can talk to them about. So flex time would be working maybe 3 12-hour days and having a 4 12-hour days, or 3 12-hour days and having a day off, or flexing your schedule, coming in early and then having 1 full day off every 2 weeks. Some people do that as well, like working a 9-hour day and then eventually within a 2-week period have an entire day off. Or also teleworking, depending on, again, commuting can be an issue. So you should find out what their telework options are, if any, and try to negotiate at least 1 telework day a week or 2 telework days a week or something like that. Bonuses. So bonuses are sometimes a percentage of your salary, or sometimes they are a flat amount. Really, there's a lot of different bonus structures out there. So I guess the first question you would probably want to ask the employer is, are bonuses even done at this company? If they are, then you'll want to find out what the structure of those bonuses are, whether it's based on your own performance, whether it's based on how much business you bring in, whether it's based on your own salary and a percentage of that. So it could be a variety of things, but that bonus schedule as well as amount can be negotiated. In addition, the company investing in you in terms of stock options can also be negotiated. And then finally, time off for family leave. So most companies now do have family leave policies. What you may want to negotiate is extended time off or paid time off or something like that. So all of these are really what we would consider your total compensation. Now, one thing to note is, let's say you're married and your partner is taking care of the health, dental, and vision benefits. In most companies, that adds about 25 to 30% above your salary in terms of compensation as to what they are paying you for your benefits. So if you know that you're not even going to be utilizing those benefits, that's a negotiating chip. You can say, my spouse is taking care of all of our benefits, therefore would it be possible for me to negotiate a higher salary knowing that I won't be using those resources? So that's something you can talk about with the employer to see if they would be willing to sort of compensate you for the portion of your benefits that you would not actually be using. So preparing to negotiate, because as I said, this is a complicated dance that you need to do. So it's something that you'll have to prepare for. in advance. And so what you want to do here is first do your market research. So positions are similar across the board. There's flexibility within job titles, of course, in terms of salary. And where that flexibility typically comes in is in the location of the position. So if you're located in New York City, or if you're located in Topeka, Kansas, even for the same position, the same work, you're going to be paid differently because of the cost of living. So salaries vary throughout the country based on geography. So there's going to be basic differences between positions just based on the market that it's in. So, but you want to sort of get an overall idea of what the market is bearing for this position so that you have some numbers in mind when you're putting together your potential salary negotiation package. But you should also know your own salary history and position titles. And the reason that's important is because, generally speaking, as you move through your career, you may be making some lateral moves, but as you go through, you're gaining experience, you're gaining skills, you're gaining abilities as you go along, and all of that is worth something. It continues to compound. It's sort of like compound interest on yourself and on your skills and on the positions that you've had. And of course, if you're switching jobs, you may be switching into a promotion, which would indicate a natural salary bump for you. But you should kind of know where you've come from and where you would like to go. So when you're coming up with your numbers, and we'll get to that in a bit as to how you kind of arrive at these numbers, you want to try to quantify your skills and contributions and ask yourself, how much are you worth? But based on the market research as well. So you don't want to go too far outside of what the market research is telling you because it would be unrealistic. You do have to stay within certain parameters, but every person brings unique skills, unique abilities, certifications, licenses, and background to every position. And all of that is worth something. All of that means something. So the closer the match you are to the job description and all of their qualifications that they're asking you for, the more you're going to be worth to them. So someone that only has one qualification in the interview process versus someone that has 10 qualifications in the interview process is going to be worth a lot more to them. They're going to want you more, and you're going to be able to command a much higher salary. And going back to what I said earlier about what you need to live on, you really need to know what you're willing to accept in terms of benefits and perks and salary. So some of you may need certain things, some of you may not need other things. To some of you, a transit subsidy doesn't really apply. To others of you, family leave wouldn't really apply. To others of you, you would really, really want to advocate for some flex time. So you have to kind of make a list of all of the things that are important to you, what you need to actually live on and prosper, and what you want to bring to the negotiating table. Okay, so here's how the process goes. Again, allow the employer to lead the process, and what they're going to do is begin with an initial number. At this point, they may also discuss benefits and perks. So, and sometimes, a lot of this information is available in the job description. They will say, we offer a competitive salary. You see that a lot. And the following benefits. So health, dental, vision, paid time off, blah, blah, blah. Some of that you'll know in advance. But it's at this point in the negotiation that you should really ask what the benefits are in addition to the salary that they've come forward with. You are initially silent. The worst thing you can do, I've heard this from other career coaches that I've worked with in the past, the worst word you can say when the employer tells you the salary is okay. Because okay is sort of implicitly agreeing with what the employer just said, even though you may not necessarily agree with it. So what you want to do is switch that to, if you feel like you have to say something. But the best thing is to just sort of initially stay silent. What you'll do is counter with a salary number that's more in line with your research. So again, going back to the last slide, the market research that you've done, knowing how much you're worth, knowing how closely you match the job description, all of this comes into play when you're countering with your salary number. And then also, you would want to outline the perks and benefits that you desire to go along with the salary. So they've told you what the perks and benefits are. You may have a few others that you want to put forward. At this point, the employer will probably want to take some time to consider the counter offer. And then finally, the employer will return with a final number. And you should really get it in writing so that, a phone conversation is fine or whatever, but if you have it in an email or you have it on an official document that this is your official offer, that's really ideal. And a lot of companies will have you sign the offer and return it, scan it and return it, and that sort of thing. What you should really do at this point is kind of sleep on it. So never accept right at that moment. You always want to say, okay, thank you for the offer. Can I let you know tomorrow or the next day, depending how long it will take you to kind of weigh it and consider whether you want to accept on it. It's possible you could counter again, but not very likely. Once you've done your research and you have your numbers in mind, one counter is typically possible, is typically where you will end up. And then, of course, you would accept or decline the offer, most likely in writing. So let's talk about strategy. What you want to do is this. You're going to have 3 numbers in mind. The first number is your absolute bottom dollar. So this is the least amount you could possibly accept. And again, there are a lot of reasons for accepting a job, some of which, are, intrinsic as far as the work environment, your supervisor, the team you'll be working with, the location, your office space. There's a lot of things that you consider when the company mission, when you're considering an offer. But of course, salary is one of the major factors in determining whether you're going to take the job or not. So you have to know what's your bottom dollar. You want the job, but this is the least possible amount you could possibly take. Then you want to have in your pocket your ideal salary. And this is based on your research and what your contributions would be to the company. So again, what are you worth? And you have to really know that. You have to be able to articulate that and fight for yourself. So this would be your really ideal salary based on your research. And then you really should have a pie in the sky number that you wouldn't necessarily put forward, but that if the employer offered that, you would certainly accept. So you kind of want a range. All right, so what kind of range are we looking at here? You're really working within a $20,000 range, from your bottom dollar to your top dollar. So for example, if your bottom dollar number is $80,000, your ideal salary is really $90,000. And your pie in the sky number is $100,000. So this is your strategy. So you want to have these kind of 3 numbers in mind and see where the employer falls in that spectrum. So if they're way, way, way low, obviously, you're not going to be able to accept the position. And of course, if you're way, way, way high, you just won the lottery, right? So here are some potential ways, because again, this is a difficult conversation. You may need some sort of scripts to help you negotiate the salary and may need a little bit of advice on what to say. So, for example, if the pay is less than you are worth, if it's that bottom dollar, you can say, thank you so much for the offer. I am really excited about the role and the work that the company is doing and would really love to join the team. However, according to my research, the typical salary range for somebody with my qualifications in this role is dollar amount. Would you be able to match that figure? So again, this is where you're countering and you've done your homework. You're not just pulling these numbers out of the air, but you know what your salary history is, you know where you want to be, you know what qualifications you brought to the table. They've offered you something low, you want to counter a little bit higher. Now, what if you have a competing offer with a higher salary at company X, but you really want to accept the offer from company Y? You can say, thank you so much for the offer. I'm really excited about the company and the role. However, as you know, I have been talking to other employers and do have another offer. If you're able to move the pay to whatever that higher number is, I'd be eager to accept. However, here's a caveat. Never lie about a competing offer. If you don't have one, it's not appropriate to use this as a negotiation tactic, because they may trap you in a situation where they're asking you questions you can't answer because you've made the whole thing up, such as, oh, really? Well, who has made you the offer? Or, oh, really? What position is it? Or, oh, really? Where is it located? And that sort of thing. So don't back yourself into a corner by lying and thinking that you're giving yourself leverage with saying that you have a competing offer. But legitimately, if you have a competing offer, then you should most definitely talk about that and use that as a bargaining chip. Okay, so what if the salary they've offered matches or slightly exceeds the salary you researched, but you still think there's a little bit more room to negotiate, more toward that pie in the sky number? You can say, I'm very excited about this offer and think that we are very close to an agreement. However, I would like to talk about compensation. Since I not only fulfill the listed qualifications of the job, like, and you can name a couple of the qualifications, but I also have, and then you can list some of the more unique characteristics that you think make you extra qualified for the role. I'd like to see the base salary at, and then give them the number that you've researched, more toward your pie in the sky number. So this, situation could definitely happen to you, and this is when you know there's more room to negotiate. Whoops, I'm sorry, I didn't advance the slide. So I'll let you read that again. So I'm very excited about this offer and think we're very close to an agreement. However, I would like to talk about compensation, since I not only fulfill the listed qualifications of the job, like some of the qualifications, but I also have the unique characteristics. I'd like to see the base salary at the number you researched. So there you go. Now, if you want to negotiate your benefits, you can say, thank you so much for the offer. This role is really exciting and the salary looks great. I'd like to follow up on a couple of details, though. How flexible are you with paid time off, let's say? The written job offer included details on the benefits, but I would like to request more paid time off, let's say. As a note, if you are negotiating a benefit to match a current benefit level or one that a competing employer offers, feel free to share that data. So you can tell them, you know, another company is offering me a transit subsidy, but I see that's not really one of your benefits. Is this something that you could offer me? So again, but again, as we said with the other on the other slide, if you don't have a competing offer, you really can't talk to the employer in this manner. So you really can't lie about that. But if you do have a competing offer in terms of benefits and perks, then it's a great bargaining chip. So you may be wondering, well, where do I find information about this? Where can I do some salary research? And there are some great websites out there, such as Salary.com, Glassdoor.com. And Glassdoor is great too because they're also company reviews, which are really helpful, I think, because they're usually all anonymous, so you can really find out what it's like to work at that company. QuintCareers.com is also a good one. Indeed.com has salary information. And finally, Payscale.com. So some final thoughts. Always negotiate. I mean, it's a rare situation where right out of the gate, the employer says your absolute pie in the sky number. That's pretty rare. And if they do, there may even be a number higher than that. So you should always negotiate. There's always a range in their mind that they've budgeted for a salary, and they're expecting that you will negotiate. Remember, silence is your friend, so never say okay when hearing a salary offer. Answer with silence or a head nod or So that I just want to reiterate that silence is your friend. Also remember that it's more than just salary. Remember those benefits and perks. Everything is negotiable. And salary negotiation will not exclude you from the job. It is expected. So the employers are prepared for it. They're ready for it. And it's not going to take you out of the running for the job at all if you negotiate. So before we get to Q&A, I just want to kind of go over a couple of Career Center resources that we have for you. You know, we have job listings from a large diversity of employers. We have a blog that has articles relating to the job search. We have a job agent capability that will email you jobs that match your qualifications. There are confidentiality options for your resume, so if you're doing a confidential job search and you don't want anyone to see your name, you can certainly indicate that. You can upload your resume as well, which I recommend. Employers are searching the database. And I offer one-on-one job coaching and mock interviews to include salary negotiation. So if you are about to go into a salary negotiation process and you want to practice, I'd be glad to do that with you and assist you. I can definitely help you with some scripting and some messaging so that you can get the most benefits out of your salary negotiation process. And here is our website, cfp.net/career-center. Okay, at this point, we'll go on with questions. And again, if you have a question, you can type your question into the Q&A box, and we will go through some of these questions. So let's see here. We have a question from John. Hello. With all of the topics discussed today, will all of the topics discussed today be changing on January 17th, 2017 with the new DOL rules? That's a good question. I think it's possible, but I still think that companies are kind of old-fashioned when it comes to salaries, so while they may change some things as far as bonuses and that sort of thing, I think in general the negotiation process will kind of stay the same. The salary ranges will be similar. Okay, Eli asks, How do you handle the question of what your current salary is in the initial screening interview? Can you duck the question? Very good question. You know, you can counter that question with, well, what is the salary range that you're offering? So since they have initiated the conversation about salary, you can counter with that. They may not want to provide that, so you may be sort of backed into a corner and have to answer the question. So unfortunately, sometimes you can duck the question by asking them what the range is, turning it back on them, but other times they'll kind of force you into a corner where you'll have to say it. Okay. So Stacy asks, if the salary is not posted in the job description or during initial interviewing, what would you suggest to do to make sure the job is in a reasonable salary range to make it interesting enough to want to pursue? Well, you know, at some point in the interview process, the salary is going to come up. So you may not know it right up front in the job description. You may not know it in one of the initial stages, but eventually you're going to find out what the salary is. So you just have to make sure you've done your research on that position title so that you know what the reasonable range is. Okay. Thomas asks, what is your opinion about sharing your salary history with a recruiter? I've heard arguments for and against. I prefer not to share. Any experienced recruiter should have a very good estimate of my salary based upon my resume, so why limit my opportunities? You definitely bring up a good point. They may want to get an initial salary history so that they can see whether their salaries are in line with what you've done prior and in terms of the position titles that you've held. But again, if this is a promotion for you, the salary history has some meaning, but it won't bear a lot of weight considering this is a promotion for you. Okay, James asks, what if you are waiting for another offer? Timing on offers seems to be a problem. Yeah, this is very tricky. So when you're in an interview process, typically you've got multiple employers on the hook. So this is also something you really need to negotiate and be sort of delicate about when you're going through the interview process. And what I would just use is kind of a delay tactic where if you have an offer on the table but you're waiting for another offer, you would say something like, if it's possible, I'd like you to give me a little bit of time to consider that offer. And then what you should do is immediately go to the other company and say, I have an offer on the table. Am I going to receive an offer from you? Okay. So Princess, just want to make sure, only begin salary negotiations after being offered the job, correct? Yeah, typically the way salary negotiation works is you're given an offer with a salary. So you're probably not going to negotiate salary before an offer is made. That's sort of generally the way it works. You may be informed of a salary up front, but you always want to wait till the offer stage, till it's really in writing when you actually do the negotiation. Okay, Eli asks, what tips do you have to negotiating the structure and terms of a bonus? For example, 20 or 30% of new revenue from new or existing clients. I would try to get some information or market data on, try to get some information on that company and what they typically offer. And try to get some information on other companies and what their structure is, or you may know from your own company, so that when you're negotiating, you kind of know what numbers that you're working within. Okay. Let's see. Okay, here's one about the review. How do you initiate a conversation about a raise during a 6-month or annual review? You know, what you want to do is make sure that you have outlined for yourself your own accomplishments over that 6-month or annual period, and make sure that you're in line with the goals that you've set for yourself with your superior, so that you can then say, you know, as you can see, I've exceeded my goals for this review period. I'd really like to see, you know, a 5% raise or some kind of bonus. So that's something that you can definitely negotiate and talk about during that process. Okay, we have a question. How do you best deal with online job application forms that request you to enter your desired salary? That's a good question. Again, it's probably a required field, so it is going to be something that you will have to enter. If the field allows you to enter text and you can put negotiable in that text box, I would advise doing that. If it doesn't and it holds you to a number, try to go with your mid-range based on the market research that you've done. Okay, let's look at some more questions. We have time for about 2 more questions. But certainly, you know, you could always email me afterwards. My email is up there, and ask any questions that you have. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's one. What if you counter and they still do not offer anything higher, so they sort of reject your counter offer? Then I guess what you need to evaluate is, you know, can you accept the position that or can you accept the salary that they initially offered you? So again, you know, remember the 3 numbers, your bottom dollar, your ideal, and your pie in the sky. So when if they refuse to counter that initial offer, just know where it falls within your 3 numbers. Okay, let's take one more question. Oops. There it is. Okay. What if you are coming in from a different industry? Do you suggest that we just go back to the salary range based on the position in the financial services? Yeah, what I would do, Nicole, is research the industry that you're going to. So you may be, for all of you out there that are career changers, you know, different industries definitely have different salary ranges. But it's perfectly normal and acceptable to negotiate within the realm that you're going to be applying to, not the realm that you've been coming from, because they're definitely going to be sort of on different levels. So make sure that you're negotiating from the standpoint of the position and the field of financial services that you're entering, and not the one that you've come from. Okay, well, I also had a request to put back up the salary website, so I wanted to do that while I'm wrapping up so that you can see what those are. So let me just get back to that slide. Here we go. Here they are, salary.com, glassdoor.com, Quint Careers, Indeed, and PayScale. So I want to thank all of you for your time today. And again, you know, I'm available for individual coaching with salary negotiation. This webinar is being recorded if you wanted to come back to it later. Thank you all for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day.